Alright, welcome once again to this calligraphy live stream, and I'm very happy to be here and share with you my calligraphy knowledge. And so let's see. So in the previous live stream we saw how you can learn calligraphy step by step. We saw that it's just a matter of practicing the vertical stroke and then the diagonal and then the horizontal stroke, and then we do the same thing except that we're curving the vertical stroke at the beginning. We're curving it a little bit, and hold on, and we're also curving the bottom of the vertical stroke over here, and we're curving the diagonal. So in this live stream I'm gonna let go of the A letter and focus on the second major letter, which is the B letter. So before we do the B letter, just gonna review the A letter so you can see the differences. So the A letter is like this, and the B letter, in contrast, you have the ascender here at the top. You go all the way down. So obviously, you know, this line is longer, so it requires more control than this line for the A, which is shorter. So this is a long line, and then we do the diagonal like this, and then the second vertical, and you see that there's a nice curve here at the bottom, and then we close by doing the horizontal stroke. So in many ways it's almost like the opposite of the A, because watch this. If I turn the letter B around, right, I'm gonna turn around, you can see, lo and behold, this looks very much like the A, because if you hide the ascender here, notice how it's very similar. In fact, it's exactly the same as the A. Can you see that this is like the A, but it's flipped? You know, it's flipped over, which is quite interesting, right? So the B is like the A, except that it's not a mirror image, but it's just flipped over 180 degrees. And by the way, it's the same thing. If you flip over the A and you add an ascender over here, then the A becomes like the B, right? Like if I were to add an ascender here, see, like it becomes very much like the B. So it's quite interesting that these two letters, and they are the head of their families, because the A letter is the main letter of a group of letters, which I should write here so that you understand. So the A letter is the leader of a group that has the G like this, the Q, the U, the Y, and the last one I always forget, the D, right, the D. And these letters are part of the same family because they share the same body. Okay, for example, if you ignore the ascender of the D, you can see that it looks like the A. In a similar manner, if you ignore the descender of the Y, it looks like the A, the Q also. But of course, you know, the U and the Y are a little bit different because they don't have the horizontal stroke at the top. They're open, right? But everything else is very similar to the A. So the A is the leader of that group of letters, so that whenever you practice the A, in a way you're practicing the other letters as well. Okay. Now the B is different. The B is also the gang leader, so to speak. So the B is like this. And the B shares similarities with the P. So you can see that it's the same body. And also the H, the N, the M, and the R. Now notice that the R is like an N that is incomplete, because if we complete the R, you know, you can see that it becomes very much like the N. So it's like the R is like an incomplete N, so to speak. And the M, of course, is just like the N, but we add an extra branch over here. And so the H, the N, the M, and the R, they have open spaces, right? They're not closed spaces like the P and the B, but they have the same diagonal arc. You can see that the same diagonal arc. And what's interesting is that in terms of the diagonal arc, if you compare the A and the B, let me just draw it here really big so that you can see. The A is like this, and the B is like this. You can see that if we draw a diagonal line like this, you notice that for the A, the line goes under the diagonal, but for the letter B, the line goes on top of the diagonal. So to make that even more clear, I'm just gonna put in shadow. So this is under the diagonal, and this is on top of the diagonal. So that's the difference. So the A letter and family and the B letter and family are the two main families, and there are other families, of course. So let's look at those three families. The third family is very straightforward. It's made up of straight lines. So the I, like this, the T, the F, the J, which has a small curve here, and you can extend it, the K, and there's the L. So typically, you know, this is probably the simplest family because it's just a bunch of straight lines, except for the K, which has diagonal lines. So let's take a look at the fourth family. I'm going to put it here so that we can compare. So the fourth family is made up of straight diagonals. So what I mean is, the V here, the W, the X, the Y, and finally the Z. And sometimes you can put a horizontal dash like this. Notice that the Y can be written like this, very straightforward, or can be written like this. So you have two ways to write the Y. Okay, now the last family is probably the most challenging for most people, and it's the C, the O, the S, and the E. Now what's interesting about this group is that they all fit within an oval. But first of all, let me just draw your attention to the letter E here. Imagine that I complete, let me just rewrite it here. If I write a line here, you can see that it's very much like the O. Okay, and so they fit within an oval shape. Let me just draw that shape so that it's more clear. So the shape is like this. It's like an oval egg, so to speak. And so now we're going to redraw those letters, and you can see that they really fit within that egg, within that oval shape. Okay. So the C will be like this. The O, of course, fits perfectly. The S. The S is going to be protruding a little bit over here. And the E is going to fit nicely. So when you, this is a trick, but when you write letters, always imagine, it might be easy or difficult, I don't know for you, but just imagine that there's an oval and you're trying to fit within that oval. So, hopefully you don't have to draw the oval. You can just imagine an oval, and then you just have to fit within that oval. And this is important because, the other letters don't rely on an oval. They rely more on a rectangle. So, for example, for the letter, let's say the letter B, you have to imagine a rectangle like this with a diagonal line. And then, so this rectangle is something you imagine on the paper. It's like it's invisible. And then you try to fit the B within that rectangle. So it's like this. Same thing with the letter A. You have to make it fit within the rectangle. But here, the fifth group, it's not a rectangle, it's more like an oval. So in a way, we're lucky with the Latin alphabet because we have only 26 letters. And you can break down the 26 letters into 5 different groups, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can practice just 5 types of letters. You don't even have to practice like all 26. And I think that it's not a mistake, but I think that, when you read calligraphy books or you watch YouTube videos, they will teach you the 26 letters. But I think it's much more efficient. It's much more powerful. It's much more efficient when you practice all the letters in one family together. So instead of practicing the A, the B, and then you go to the C and the D and the E, it's very confusing because what happens with students is that, you write the A, right? So it has a certain structure, and then you write the B, which has a different structure, so it's confusing. And then you write the C, which is from the fifth family. You know, it's not a rectangle anymore, it's an oval, so it's very confusing. And then you go to the D, you go back to this rectangle, and then the E, it's an oval again. You know, it's very confusing. So the way that I teach students is that I tell them, look, just practice the A family. You know, the family has to stick together, right? Practice the A family so that you generate momentum and you really master A, G, Q, U, Y, D. And then once you're done, then you can start practicing the B, you know, and then you practice the other families. So that way you will learn much faster. Okay, so that's it for this live stream. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next live stream.